Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to Global Politics. This is Dr. David D. Schein, and on the other side of the pond, we have Ian Pelham Turner, and we talk about all things between the UK and the USA, and many times we agree, and sometimes we don't, but it's a very educational experience.
Well, good evening. Well, it's evening to us. It's I think it's lunchtime for you.
Yes, it is. In fact, I will probably grab some lunch right after we're done recording, but it is interesting. I did an interview a few days ago with a gentleman in Japan, and he was so kind because we agreed on a particular time, and I found out that it was after midnight in Japan when we were recording, and I felt quite bad that I had kept him up into the wee hours, as I believe you folks in Britain say.
Do you know, I'm well aware of it because a lot of the time, different parts of America, especially if they're doing breakfast shows or lunchtime shows, it's midnight or 2-3 o'clock in the morning, our time. And I think the worst ones for me are Australia. I love Australia, and I love the Australian channels. They're so funny. They're great to work with. But it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not my best, I have to sort of say. So that, you know.
And I try and avoid, I do go to a number of breakfast networking meetings, but I do my best not to do them super early. And in fact, my local chamber has a meeting from 8, their breakfast meeting is 8:30 to 10. And that works very well for me. But the 7 a.m. breakfast meetings, it's like, no, I'm not Mr. Networker at 7 in the morning. But Ian, there's been a tremendous amount happening in the world. And of course, we focus on how this impacts the relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States. And of course, it's such a positive situation because the two countries do have a very positive relationship. But I'm sensing that there is definitely a difference in approach between the two countries, at least at the moment, with regard to our mutual ally, Israel. And it just seems that England is doing more to help Israel, and the United States has been a little bit somewhat recalcitrant when it seems like they should be a little bit more affirmative.
Yeah, I think, you know, with obviously, I think I probably told you before, I worked in Lebanon last year. I'm very well aware of the politics in Lebanon, or the non-politics probably would be more precise, with the government that is really a puppet government more than anything in Lebanon. But I think, you know, the reality at the moment is that people in Britain feel that, you know, we should be descaling as much as possible what is going on in all these areas. Because I think, you know, as well, having been in Beirut and watching Beirut being blasted apart at the moment, I know how scary it is. One of the first things I was taken to when I was in Beirut was to, they took me to the docks, or the former docks, I should say, of Beirut itself. And it was alleged that Israelis blew the dock up in 2020. It killed 3,000 people in one day, and it took out a mile of buildings as well. And I think, when I look at both sides at the moment, as I do, what Hamas did, and obviously we have to be careful today because today is the day, is the
Yes.
first anniversary at the same time. So my heart goes out to the Jewish people. Don't think for 1 second I support what Hamas did in any way, shape, or form. But I think the reality at the moment is a lot more emphasis that we're hearing about from Israel is really trying to get the hostages home rather than to try and annihilate the whole of the Middle East in the process. And I think, for us as well, most people, the government especially, is now hoping that, to de-escalate the situation. I think, for me, because, I mean, we're looking at, I think in Gaza now that there's something like about, I forget how many thousands of people are now being killed. You
Yes,
know,
it's over. The current report is, as of this morning, is over 42,000 reported killed, but there's no division between the Hamas militants, the civilians, and sadly, in some cases, the aid workers have been killed, including medical doctors and other people. So it is a difficult situation, there for sure. And in Lebanon, I have not heard the civilian deaths yet, but I believe the number is around 2,000 deaths. And again, we know that there's been targeted hits on the Hamas leaders and the Hezbollah leaders who were hanging out in Lebanon, but we don't know how many, innocent bystanders were killed at the same time. And I was going to back up and ask you to tell us a little bit about, because we in the United States, I mean, I remember Lebanon as a country that 30 or 40 years ago had a significant Christian minority. My understanding is the Christian minority, if they've had any choice at all, have left the entire country.
I think what's been happening, you see, the problem with this whole situation is that where the Hezbollah enclaves are really more in the mountains, just in Lebanon itself, are tightly packed. So I was taken to an enclave to meet, to go into a Hezbollah region. I was protected there and I was protected back, but I was given a military escort when I got into Hezbollah territory and a military escort from Hezbollah again as I came out to ensure that nothing unduly happened to me at the same time. But, the enclave that we went to had 20,000 people in a very, very small area. So if a bomb happened to drop onto that area, it would wipe out 20,000 people so quickly, so simply. And Hezbollah works on a system where the actual house we went to, they didn't vote for Hezbollah. So what happens each time there's an election where Hezbollah is seeking support? They go to each house and each enclave, and they offer $250 to that household to actually support Hezbollah. The reality is that's 12 months' wages. So on the average wage in Lebanon is $20 a month. Now, the other scary thing that I'm really worried about as well, I was also privy to meet representatives of the American Embassy in Beirut. Now, I don't want to give too much away as well, even here, but it's massive. It's not your normal type of embassy by any means at all. And my fear again is that if by chance something happens and it's closer to where they're hitting, close to some of the more prosperous areas of Beirut right now. And my fear is that if one of these rockets goes the wrong way or something happens, and it drops into the middle of the US embassy, that will be America. It's like, Honolulu, it's like Hawaii all over again,
Yes.
and so this is becoming a very, very dangerous time. And I think the other thing, and I'd like your opinion on this as well, is that when President Biden said the other night, he came out and someone asked him, are they thinking about bombing, what was it, the oil refineries or the nuclear
Yes.
stations in Iran? And his words before he trailed away was, we're thinking about it. I think the stock exchange went down several points, and I think the blood pressure of most of his representatives went up several points. What did you think?
Well, first of all, Biden has become the invisible president, and I hopefully will have some time today to talk a little bit about that, the impact on the relationship between the two countries, because we do seem to be, the infamous story of the headless horseman, and because Kamala is out running around campaigning, which is what she's supposed to be doing right now, and the VP slot in the United States has never really been a very significant slot. Harry Truman probably the most significant exception to that in 1946, 45. But there's a real concern with regard to Biden when he does make statements. They seem to be somewhat random in nature, and that they're not tied to necessarily a consistent policy of the United States. So one day it's, hey, we're going to sell, $200 billion worth of arms to Israel. And the next day, well, we really don't want Israel to keep bombing everybody, and we'd really like them to settle down. So I think if Biden is consistent, he would prefer that Israel not bomb Iran right now for two reasons. One is it could indeed lead to World War III, which is, of course, lingering out in the background. We're going to talk some more about that. But also, it would kind of be the final nail in the coffin, because even though he has been summarily removed from political office by his compadres, he still would like to see a Democrat, elected to the presidency, because that's his lifelong. He's been an active politician for 50 years. So, an explosion in the Middle East, a significant escalation at this time in the Middle East, is something that I think that Biden would very, very much like to avoid. That would be my considered thought on this. But America, people keep saying, many commentators keep saying, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. It is the only true ally of the United States and, frankly, of the UK. And therefore, we need to show its support. And of course, Israel was simply the incredible victim. And, most of the Americans, we parallel October 7th, 2023 to 9/11, which, of course, a month ago we had the anniversary of 9/11, and, an extremely sad event. And as someone pointed out over the weekend, is we lost 3,000 people in one brief period of time. And today, the equivalency of the loss of life in Israel on October 7th would be equivalent to us losing 40,000 people in one day. So, it's a very significant situation. And Ian, you're going to have a second to ponder a reply there, because we are going to move to our first break on global politics, and hopefully people will stay tuned.
My name is Dr. Felix Kravitz, and I am the founder of cybersecurityeasy.com, LLC. We live in a world full of vulnerabilities and cyber risks. We spend almost 4.5 hours a day on our mobile phones. It's over 7 hours of screen time daily when including computer use. We often forget that this convenience comes with risks, published data predicts that the cost of cybercrime will exceed $10.5 trillion in 2025. These numbers encompass not only businesses, but also each one of us, including our children and our parents. In 2023, the FBI reported over $3.4 billion lost by seniors aged 60 and older. cybersecurity.easy.com LLC's initiative is to massively support the community by providing cyber safety coaching and improving social engineering awareness. Our goal is to make social engineering concepts of cybersecurity easier to understand. We work with business teams, seniors, and educational institutions, both individually and in groups. We cover various topics from phone phishing attacks to AI-generated voice cloning, robocalls, password protection, and more using life examples. Talk to us today. Call us at 847-845-9360 or email us at info@cybersecurity.easy.com.
Welcome back to Global Politics. This is Ian Pelham Turner in England and Dr. David D. Schein in the United States. And we explore all things global in this show. And we sometimes talk about fun stuff, but unfortunately, given the state of the world, a lot of stuff's pretty darn serious this week. And we've been talking a little bit about the relationship between Lebanon, the situation in Israel, and the support between the UK and the United States. And one of the things is that the United States has been giving mixed messages in terms of its support for Israel. Ian, what are you seeing coming from the UK side? You were indicating before the break that you thought maybe the people in UK would kind of like things to back off a little bit, but is the government of UK of that same feeling?
I think basically there's a very strong Jewish lobby in Britain.
Interesting.
And second of all, at one stage, the Labour Party, the equivalent to the Democrats, was accused of being anti-Semitic. And they had to fight a long issue to actually prove that there wasn't anti-Semitism, in the thing. And this was during a Jeremy Corbyn area when he was the former leader at that time. And he was much more for Palestinians and rather took not such a positive view of Israel. So bearing both of those things in mind, as all politicians of Keir Starmer are prime ministers, powerful presence, he sits on the fence. So what part of him is sort of saying to the Jewish lobby, yes, we will support Israel. And then when he looks to the left wing of his party, he's also saying, yes, we're going to stop the bombing. They've been to the United Nations and the whole thing. So, it's the reality at the moment is, I don't think, in reality, I don't think Britain has much to play. Yes, I think we've put a frigate in the area to actually help support. We've started flying out our nationals because it was very difficult for them to get out of Beirut itself. And I think, that they've done their bit. They've banned 30% of the ammunitions being sent to Israel now as well. There's been a certain amount of reductions in all of this. But as I say, I think, where we are looking right now, I'm sure you get your nightly bulletins, and all we can see at night is big explosions. The firepower now, they've left Gaza as a desert of human cost as well. And now they're turning their firepower on Beirut especially, and other areas of Lebanon at the same time. And yes, there is a contingency, I agree, of Hezbollah that will fight back. It was financed and is being funded by Iran at the same time. And, the scary part at the moment is what is Israel going to do next? Because I think my guess is that they've waited until after today, for October the 7th for the first anniversary. And then perhaps even tonight they might, fire off another salvo into Iran. And so this continues, you know. And so, I don't know what America thinks about it.
Well, it's anybody's guess as to what will happen. I can tell you that the world community seems to be fairly enthusiastic that Israel do the bidding that the rest of us won't do, which is to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran. The feeling being that probably one of the most dangerous countries other than North Korea to have nuclear weapons is Iran, since they've actually promised to use them. At least North Korea said, well, we will only use them if we're attacked. They, Kim Jong-un has at least said that. But the Iranians, the folks in charge, do seem to be quite serious. And it's interesting because I've actually, as a professor, have interviewed Iranian students who wanted to come here to pursue a graduate degree. And the young lady I talked to was worried about bringing her 2 dogs with her and seemed to be the most typical early 20s bright young woman that I've ever dealt with, and certainly doesn't look like what we're seeing when we hear Khomeini and some of the rest of the cats giving these crazy speeches about everybody's going to get killed and all that. So it makes me nervous because I am particularly concerned that we protect the civilian population, and I think that targeted bombing is a better way to do that. And it was interesting what Israel originally did in Lebanon that triggered the Iranian attack was that they, actually blew up specific apartments and things with these incredibly targeted bombs. But that does not seem to be, as you indicated, what's happening right now. There seems to be some very significant bombing activity. And I don't know the city of Lebanon, but I understand that they've been bombing the southern suburbs, which they indicate is where the Hezbollah folks live in the Lebanon, in the Beirut area.
The problem in that area is really, it's like a ghetto area, first of all. It's shantytown.
Yes.
That's the best way of describing it. So, as I say, close to that where the port was, one bomb or one explosion, allegedly that the Lebanese always think it was the Israelis doing it in 2020. It killed 3,000 people in one day. And it took out a mile of buildings, which, still haven't been repaired back again. And so, it's a very, very tight community, that in all these areas. And just to call it sort of South Beirut, it's not that big a city in the first place. You can probably go around the whole city in about 40 minutes, if that. It's not that big by any means. But the reality, again, is all the time is that it's supposedly 1 million people have actually already left, the southern part of Lebanon to actually come into Beirut. There just isn't the capacity. And so if they start trying to sort of stay either on the beaches, which is one area that they've been talking about, or in areas, more in the south of Beirut, the chances are that they will be moved on or they'll be bombed again. It's a situation where, as you so rightly say, there is a large proportion of Christians in Lebanon and in Beirut as well. And yes, there is a large contingency. It's a very powerful contingency of Hezbollah as well. But how you disseminate between a building that may contain Hezbollah and not hit the hospital next door, or take it out at the same time. That's what's happening.
Yes, it's certainly a humanitarian concern of all that, and of course I've also noticed that Israel has started to do more concentrated bombing with the Houthis over in Yemen, and of course, to me, it's a little bit of a surprise, but I thought it was interesting because during the major rocket attack from Iran about 2 weeks ago, the United States directly assisted Israel in identifying and taking out those rockets. And I understand that with regard to the Houthis, that both England and the United States supported them in part of this and it makes perfect sense because they're impairing one of the most important shipping channels in the world. So it seems that there would be a world consensus that you cannot have a bunch of terrorists with a whole lot of modern weaponry attacking such an important shipping area. So, but it's all part of the same deal. You've got Gaza, you have Lebanon, and you've got the issue in Yemen. And the issue in Yemen actually seems to have more impact internationally because of the impact on the traffic through the Red Sea.
No, absolutely right, because basically what's been happening recently has been adding 2 to 3 weeks journey as they don't go through the Red Sea and they circumnavigate around that area. And obviously, see, there's implications all the time because, basically Britain sent off, I think, 2 or 3 naval frigates, and I think there is, although they won't talk about it much, I think there is a nuclear sub in the area as well, just in case there's a warning signal. But with all of this, it's madness. Let's be honest. This is madness. Being piled on madness. And in this world right now, when we're trying to give, I think we're both of a similar age. I'm probably more senior even than you. We want to give our young people a future. Mm-hmm. And the reality at the moment is, if we're not careful, and you see, it's all very well trying to take out the nuclear facilities, but that then distributes nuclear waste into the skies as well as everything else. And you've only got to look at Chernobyl, as a prime example of doing something like that as well. I mean, thank goodness I'm not a politician. I can just complain about them. So it's a lot easier for me just to sort of sit on my own personal fence, and talk to both sides. But I just, for me, it's just a terrible situation. And I think the British people now are starting more and more. I mean, we had a demonstration in London for Palestinians on Saturday, and 100,000 people turned up. And really sort of brought that part of London to a halt. There's a lot of ill feeling on all sides right now. And I think the British government is more worried about the language which is being used as well. And apparently some of the protesters in that march were holding up signs saying, we support, I think it was Hezbollah or Hamas. That was the sign. Yes. Now, that apparently, under British law now is illegal.
Whoa.
We are not allowed to sort of say that anymore on a placard. Now, who decided that, or which law that came under? That's coming under some terrorist act. Now, who decided that? This is where politics becomes sometimes used, for law purposes as well. And as you are, renowned as an attorney at the same time, you will understand freedom of speech is just as important.
Well, it is extremely important, and in fact, it's been a huge political issue in the United States in terms of this prosecution, if you will, on what some people label as misinformation and others label as the real truth. And there's old cliche about there's your truth, my truth, and then the real truth somewhere else, and we're encountering that for sure right now. And we've got so much to talk about, but we're going to head into our second break here, and you are listening to Global Politics on USA Television and Radio Network with Ian Pelham Turner and Dr. David D. Schein. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Dr. Felix Kravitz. I have taught seniors and understand the crucial importance of online safety education for this community. I have also taught and worked at various colleges, universities, and training facilities in the Chicago region. My goal is to educate seniors, helping them to feel safer while navigating the digital world. Call me today to learn more and get started. Together, we can enhance our seniors' understanding of safety concepts when using technology. Contact cybersecurity.easy.com LLC by visiting our website www.cybersecurity.easy.com. Call us at 847-845-9360 or email us at info@cybersecurity.easy.com.
Okay, we're out of that break. Okay. Welcome back to Global Politics. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein, with my favorite co-host, Ian Pelham Turner. And we're on each side of the pond, as we say, talking about some awfully serious issues today. And I want to volunteer regarding, you mentioned that you were happy you were not a politician. I do need to admit that I did run for office many years ago. Actually ran twice, I lost twice, and it was an extremely educational process. I do want to say that. And it also educated my children, none of whom seemed to have any interest in politics, having gone door to door with me during the summer of 1992. But it I think fed into some of the things that I'm doing today, including this show. But I'm very happy to not be a politician. In fact, after my second run in 1996, I said, the only way I will serve in a political position is if I'm appointed. I said, I'm running for office is for the birds. And you can see some of the political divide in the United States. We actually have had a 200% increase in anti-Semitic attacks in the United States over the last 12 months. And most of this is, of course, these pro-Palestinian and shockingly pro-Hezbollah and pro-Hamas, when these are organizations that are strictly about hate and about destroying people. They are not against the law under the First Amendment in the United States, but it's very interesting because the no longer in office Hillary Clinton and the no longer in office John Kerry have both said over this past weekend on various talking head shows, hey, we think we really need to crush all of these bad things being said in the media and all that. And apparently they in their addled old age have forgotten the significance of the First Amendment. So it is very interesting. But I did want to contrast that very quickly because I got the impression sitting on, again, I was in Scotland during the month of May, is that the new Liberal government has been involved in some of these determinations of you can't put certain things up. And it seemed to me, isn't that kind of counterintuitive that a Liberal government would be cracking down on political protest?
I think, with all these things at the moment, I have to be extremely careful what I say is the reality, because terrorism act, to cover all different sources. It really can. So and so what I try to do right now is I will never condone any form of violence like Hamas or Hezbollah have done. I will never condone that as well. And I hope that that the thought processes that are being offered to Israel right now about reducing this amount of bombing will be listened to at the same time. Let me put it that way, as more comfortably as I can, because I get what happened 1 year ago. For that to happen is dreadful. There's no way in this world that we could ever condone any of that type of violence. That was just absolutely without foundation. I think at the same time, though, that but the types of programming that we are seeing, the opinions that we're seeing coming out of Tel Aviv right now, is much more on get the hostages home rather than bomb Beirut out of the world. And it depends, because I think Netanyahu, I noticed that his poll rating has gone up slightly. I mean, it went down extremely low for a long time. And you see, my fear, the fear that I have is that it has always been alleged that once this war is over and peace happens again, he's going to be tried for several misdemeanors that he may be waiting in once this war is over. So the question that always throws in my world is, is he prolonging this war just to ensure that he doesn't go to prison?
Oh, that's a fascinating situation. I'm not up on that particular piece, but I do know that he has some enemies, and I think it's a very safe bet that he will leave office at some point after this thing reaches a settlement. And we know from 1948 to present that there will be a stopping point somewhere, and it may be an uncomfortable stopping point like they've been in for the last 15 years, but we know that that'll happen. I wanted to shift gears a little bit to speaking of another place where we both countries have dumped a lot of money, and that of course is the Ukraine Russia situation. And I think that the UK has been actually more visibly supporting Zelensky than even the United States. It seems that seems to be a UK priority. And do you think that my observation is correct?
Yes, I think, when Zelensky went to the United Nations and then he met Biden as well, and then he met Trump, and he didn't seem very comfortable with Trump. First of all, Trump was towering over him. He's quite minute, actually. I didn't realize how small in stature, but not big in heart at the same time that he was. But I think at the moment we have a large Ukrainian community who fled the country and came to sort of settle in Britain. I've got several Ukrainian friends as well. So again. But you see, the problem now is at the moment, everybody is focused. The news channels are all focused on the Middle East. And so, Putin has got a very good chance of, causing further insurgencies. And they're not going to get in the news that much either. They've transferred most of their what's known as the war journalists from Ukraine and moved them to the Middle East instead. And I think, the reality at the moment, to answer your question, yes, I think from a very early time, we fought against Germany during the Second World War, and that was really, and why we did that, is historic in '39. And I think, we saw the same type of boundaries being, closed down again with Ukraine as well. And I think, the reality at the moment is I understand in one way what Putin is saying, because now he's surrounded by NATO countries. But at the same time, when you analyze the lifestyle of Putin, for example, where he built this golden palace. I think they spent something like about $800 million on this golden palace, including toiletries that were all gold plated as well, or even for him to have his daily ablutions on. It is. I saw it because in one way, I understand it. I was one of the first Western journalists to be allowed in after Perestroika. And I spent quite a long time in Moscow as well. And I saw that basically in the old days, things like the KGB, Red Army, and so forth, they all ate. Now, that might seem strange to us, but they all had supermarkets where they could eat, where they could get food from. And the average Muscovite would queue up for hours just to get some cigarettes from a factory.
Yes.
And I remember the first time I came, this might amuse you as an attorney as well. The first week I ever came there, and one night there was this court case going on. And they are extremely mad drivers. They all look like like Rasputin, I should say. The drivers in Moscow, and they drive like madmen. And there's no such things as roads to them. And so one of these taxi drivers was racing down the pavement of a Moscow street and knocked over this old lady. And then the court case ensued, where the taxi driver was suing this old lady for not getting out of his way.
Oh my goodness!
And that was typical of Moscow at that time. Again, I think we may have a similar generation where we knew about what was called the Iron Curtain. When I was growing up. And so my first visit into Moscow, and I'm thinking, okay, well, it's going to be the KGB. Everybody's going to be listening to everyone else. We were told, don't do this, this, and this. In the end, I actually was made an honorary KGB member, because it was the only way of keeping the money lenders and people who wanted to exchange rubles for dollars away from the hotels. And they would walk up to you out of the Western hotel. There was only one Western hotel at that time. And you would walk out of the hotel, and the money, people wanted to sort of change dollars for rubles. But as soon as they saw the KGB badge, they did a right angle turn, and that was it. But the point I'm making, more than anything, is that I think when Putin came to power, he was trying to create a new powerful force for the KGB. I think it's called the SB now, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And to the oligarchs who were really, a lot of them probably former KGB employees at the same time. When all these, when it was the demarcation under Gorbachev happened, suddenly thousands of military people and their families lost the opportunity of actually getting food and had to queue up with the rest. And so that's where we first started seeing Russian oligarchs. In fact, I met one of them. He was one of the first Russian oligarchs. But a lot of the time, I think what Putin was trying to do, and what he's been trying to do ever since, is bring back the power of the KGB or the FSB as it is now.
Now, in terms of this situation, do you see my current thinking in the United States is that neither Barack Obama nor Joe Biden is actually in charge, that we've got a cabal, some people call it the deep state here in the United States, of very wealthy people. The most common name mentioned is George Soros, but we know that people like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and people like that have been involved behind the scenes in supporting what's going on. In Russia, do you see this collection of 6 to 8 oligarchs actually running the country, and Putin is the face of it, which is what we see here in the United States with Obama and Biden? Or do you see Putin as this more like a Stalin-esque figure who determines what it is, and if you're an oligarch, that's really cool, and you give your piece to the leader so that he can live in his $800 million palace, but that you're still secondary to that? Because I know what I've heard is there's been a couple oligarchs who have crossed Putin and ended up in a jail cell. So it doesn't sound like the rich guys are necessarily running things over there.
Well, there was quite a good commentary, televised commentary, a few weeks ago now, where some acts of Putin's parliament had to be signed by all the Politburo, as it is these days.
Yes.
And one after that, they were all sat in a row, about 20 of them. They were all sat in a row, and there was Putin behind the desk. They all had to stand up one after the other and swear allegiance to this new act, and obviously swear allegiance to Putin at the same time. And there was one guy at the very, very end who was trying to sit on the fence. And Putin started saying to him, "Are you going to support me? Are you supporting, are you supporting Russia, mother country?" And you could see that what he was saying was, do you want to live or not?
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, let's pick up a little bit more on that, and we've got some other fine things to talk about as we head into our final break for this edition of Global Politics with Ian Pelham Turner and Dr. David D. Schein. So we were talking about Russia, but I also wanted to look a little bit at the situation with Ukraine, because obviously people have gotten very excited in the United States because of the offensive that Ukraine mounted has actually created an incursion into Russia. They've actually had drones over Moscow, which is fascinating. But at the same time, the top military experts that I hear interviewed from time to time say it is absolutely impossible for Ukraine to win. They can hurt Russia, but Russia has apparently willingly lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers. I mean, it's incredible, but at the same time, they've destroyed a great deal of the country of Ukraine. And something that doesn't seem to have made it into the national press, but of course I try and read a little deeper, is that Russia has continued to increase its hold on the Donbass region, which appears to have been its initial objective, because with the Donbass, they can connect Crimea on the south, up Donbass along the east, and then into Russia, and it creates a smoother situation for them. Of course, it also handicaps further the industrial capacity of the country of Ukraine. So the outlook does not appear to be particularly positive, maybe a little of a PR stunt, if you will, doing some of the things that they've done in Russia, and including, speaking of PR stunts, Zelensky's recent tour in the United States here, where he did the political thing. And I know what he's afraid of. He's afraid that Trump will come in and say, the budget, the dollar flow has ended, and you will be stuck with Russia keeping the Donbass and permanently keeping Crimea, and you're going to have a smaller country with less industrial capacity, and you're going to like it because that's the deal that we're going to make, because we're going to stop sending money to you. And it's a very substantial amount of money. So I don't know, is that what you're seeing from your end?
Well, I mean, we're hearing, for example, that Putin has just conscripted 120,000 more young people to go to the army because the army is depleted because they're all dead. You know,
Yes.
I mean that young people are fleeing Russia as quickly as they can because they'll be conscripted into the army instead in the first place. And I think, you know, that the reality at the moment is what we mustn't forget is, and what Hitler forgot about trying to invade Russia was the winter. And the winter
Yes.
is fast approaching in Russia now and in Ukraine as well. Everything comes to a stop, you know, because it is so vicious these winters. Everything comes to a halt, and so there's going to be quite a few months until early next year, I think, when there will be there may be rockets being flown over, for example, but the main sort of artillery, I think, is going to come to a grinding halt. Whether and the other thing, of course, is, as you so rightly say, I think it was something like about 400 billion that was going to. I'm not sure I got the correct figure on that. That was going to be given
It's a
by
lot of money. It's a
um,
lot of money.
it is a lot of money, for weapons. I mean, I think in comparison, I think we've offered 5 billion in assets over perhaps a longer period as well in the process. It is a difficult decision because how do you stop a dictator? And Putin, in my estimation, is just a pure dictator.
Yes.
Anyway, how do you stop the dictator from trying to bully, his own population and then the whole of the Western area to his way of thinking, just purely for his own benefit? This is not for the benefit of Russia. This is just for the benefit, I believe, for to remain powerful amongst his fellow oligarchs that may be former KGB like himself. So you look at that at the same time. I think Zelensky, that we've had several really shows about Zelensky recently, about his lifestyle from the past, and where he is now. And I think, the reality at the moment, I can imagine that, he's probably biting his fingernails at the moment, waiting to see who wins the election. Because, as you so rightly say, if former President Trump becomes president again, I think that one of his first acts is that he thinks he can stop this war just by stopping the flow of money. And that will be that, So it's going to be very interesting. But then he's not been a great fan of NATO, I don't think either. And so, NATO has been circling Russia for some time. Finland's coming on board now. Sweden and some other countries are coming on board at the same time. So NATO has probably virtually encircled Russia.
Yes.
Right at the same time. So,
well,
and we look at the funding, because I don't think in reality what's been helping to support the Russian economy is obviously oil, because of the oil issues. So that's been flowing into Europe again, and the gas has been flowing into Europe again, which has been giving him his, financial dominance.
It's plenty of money, absolutely.
But actually now going to Kim Jong-un for his weapons,
I saw that. Yes.
I get a strange feeling that actually hasn't got so many friends in this world as he thought he had.
Oh, really? Well, one of the things that I think is interesting is because I was a youngster during the Vietnam War, but I remember the protests quite vividly, especially watching on television as a kid the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, which with these massive protests and the whole world's watching and all that. And I find it interesting because in reality, it seems to me that the invasion of Ukraine by Russia is the Vietnam, and it's a replay where Russia had a failed incursion into Afghanistan. Speaking of failed incursions, of course, then the United States repeated the mistake. And of course, in Vietnam, the United States went in after France gave up and repeated the mistake. So the question is I guess the historical perspective may be, why are the people of Russia at some point not saying, not my son, we're not going to let this continue? And there's got to, even with the huge amount of oil revenue coming in, there's got to be a stopgap there. I would think that the stores, with the way the international community has cut the country off, that there's got to be a situation where there are things that people can't buy. There's a lot of young men who are missing and probably not going to return, given the incredible loss of life.
You see, I think, nowadays, when you look at Russia at the moment, the depletion of their citizens, first of all, is immense. To actually conscript another 120,000 to actually sort of fight in the army as well. But to answer your other question, what we have seen quite a bit of is that if someone protests in Russia, it's a 10-year sentence. It's an automatic 10-year sentence in in some good god awful place, where he sort of sends these prisoners to, and that's if they survive. There is, I think Putin rules through fear. And although you see thousands of people coming out into the streets to protest against this, a large proportion of them, it's like, I remember the times in Hong Kong, where there were protests with Chinese taking over and then the Chinese influence. And that, that's all gone, because now China is just taken out all the dissidents. And where they are, I don't know. But, they are certainly gone now. And I think, it's a similar circumstances in Russia.
Absolutely. Well, we haven't touched on China today, and I think we'll save that for another show. I had that in the back of my mind. Quickly, as we've got a few minutes, and literally just a few minutes left, wanted to ask you, we obviously have had one of the largest natural disasters in history hit the United States. It's called Hurricane Helene, and it appeared to be at the starting point another hurricane, and I've lived in hurricane-prone areas my entire life. I live in Houston, Texas. We had a Cat 1 hurricane hit us just a couple months ago, and we actually were hit by a tropical storm, wasn't even a hurricane, that did enormous damage during May. And we've got a situation where Helene rolled into the panhandle of Florida, but then proceeded to stomp its way through much of the southeastern United States. The latest death toll is 225, which makes it in the top 20 major storms here in the United States since they've started keeping records. So the question is, very quickly, what kind of reaction do you see in Britain? Do the people in Britain just see it as an event, or what?
No. We had a tremendous amount of TV time on it, and we're very sorry for what's happening with it as well. What a lot of our news programs were showing, the decimation of houses, in fact, the disappearance of houses, and then people who had lived in their houses all their life but hadn't insured the houses because they couldn't afford it. And where do they go from now? There was this total feeling of desperation for those types of people who no longer had anywhere to live at all. And what were they going to do? People of my age, and where are they going to go? Who's going to look after them? And so I think in one way, I wouldn't say our system is much better, where we look after, and I hope Americans do look after their own as well. I'm not quite sure how that works, but no, a lot of it was actually shown.
Well, this is a very sad situation, but we're going to have to visit some more in the future. Like I said, maybe we'll talk some more about China and about how each country and its citizens views the other. But of course, we're just two individuals: Ian Pelham Turner in England, Dr. David dschein here in the United States, and we're going to call it a show for global politics on the USA Global Television and Radio Network. Thanks for joining us. Please tune in again.
Take care.